He's pulling away. I said something wrong. He probably thinks I'm too much. This always happens to me. No argument happened. No one left. No one even said anything. But inside, her chest is tight, her thoughts are spinning, and somewhere in her body it already feels like an ending. And here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. It's not intuition. It's not a red flag. It's not even about him. It's your brain, doing exactly what it was wired to do. Manufacturing a rejection that hasn't happened yet, out of nothing but silence. Stay with us. On Wired for Intense, the Unquiet Mind, and for 16 years we have worked with the science of emotional survival, specifically the ways our nervous systems learned to protect us from love, long before we were old enough to question whether that protection was still necessary. Today we're going inside that moment, the one where everything is technically fine, but your nervous system has already declared a catastrophe. We're going to talk about the specific network in your brain that runs a story machine in the background of your life, and why it's been using your oldest wounds as the script for every new relationship you've ever entered. Because here's what the science actually shows. Your brain doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't need a reason. When there's silence, when there's ambiguity, it reaches back into every rejection you've ever survived, and it writes the ending before the other person has even spoken. And when you believe that story, you act on it. You go cold. You test them. You pull back first to protect yourself from something that was never actually coming. You didn't get rejected. You rejected the moment before it had a chance to become anything. That's what this video is about. Not just what's happening, but why it got installed in the first place, and why no amount of self-awareness alone will shut it down. Before the pattern, there was a moment. There always is. You weren't born flinching. You weren't born scanning a room for exits, rehearsing rejection before anyone opened their mouth. Something taught you that. Someone taught you that. Maybe it was the day you ran to tell someone something that mattered to you, really mattered, and they didn't look up. Didn't turn around, just kept moving like your excitement was background noise, and something in your small nervous system quietly filed that away. Don't need too much. Don't show too much. It won't land anyway. Maybe it was louder than that. A classroom, a lunch table. The moment you reached towards someone and the reaching itself became the embarrassment. However it happened, your brain did what brains are designed to do. It learned. It adapted. It built a wall and called the wall wisdom. And you grew up, left the classroom, left the house, entered new rooms with new people who had nothing to do with any of it. But the nervous system doesn't check the calendar. It doesn't know you're older now. It only knows what it was taught, that showing interest is a risk, and the last time you took it, something broke. And here's the part that makes this so hard to unlearn. It worked. The wall worked. The withdrawal worked. The habit of going cold before anyone could go cold on you. It protected you. It kept the worst of it at bay. Your nervous system built something intelligent, something logical, something that looked at the data from your earliest experiences and engineered a response. If I don't reach, I can't be left empty-handed. If I don't show it, they can't use it against me. If I assume the worst first, the worst can never surprise me. This isn't weakness. This is sophisticated survival architecture, built by a brain that was simply doing its job. Threat detected, defense constructed, system activated. The problem isn't that it was built wrong. The problem is that it never got the memo that the war ended. Because now you're standing in front of someone who hasn't hurt you, someone who might actually stay. And the same system that once kept you safe is scanning them for exit signs, reading neutral silences as withdrawal, turning ordinary ambiguity into evidence of abandonment. The architecture is still standing. The danger it was built for is long gone, and it cannot tell the difference. There's a conversation that never happened, that you've already had 1,000 times. You saw someone across the room, or a name appeared on your phone, or a new person walked into a space where you were and something in you stirred. That quiet flicker of, I'd like to know them. And before a single word left your mouth, before a single step was taken, the trial began. They probably have someone already. They're out of my league. I'd come across as too eager. They don't seem like they'd be into someone like me. And just like that, the verdict was delivered. Guilty of not being enough. Sentenced to silence. You never approached. Never replied. Never let the moment breathe long enough to become anything. And you walked away carrying the weight of a rejection that the other person never issued, because the other person never even knew there was something to reject. This is what the research calls preemptive rejection. But that clinical label doesn't quite capture what it actually feels like from the inside. Because from the inside, it doesn't feel like fear. It feels like logic. It feels like reading the room. Like saving yourself from an embarrassment that hasn't happened yet but obviously would. Your brain ran a simulation, cast them in a role, wrote their lines, directed the whole scene, and then accepted the fictional outcome as fact. And the cruelest part? You'll never know what they would have said. You'll never know if that was the person who would have changed something. The door was closed from the inside, quietly, before they ever had the chance to walk through it. You didn't get rejected. You got to the door first, and locked it yourself. And somewhere on the other side, they never even knew you were standing there. This time, you showed up. That matters. You walked through the door, took the seat, stayed in the conversation. You didn't run the simulation and disappear. You were there, physically, genuinely, with something real quietly burning underneath the surface. You were interested, completely. You felt it moving through you like a current, the attention you were paying to every word they said, the way you were tracking their humor, noticing the way they tilted their head when they were thinking. Inside, you were fully present, fully alive to the possibility of this person. And yet, they walked away thinking you were cold. This is the part that feels like a cruel joke, because you were trying. You showed up and you tried, and still it didn't land. But here is what the research shows, and it is almost unbearable in its precision. When anxiety enters the room, it doesn't just make you feel nervous. It physically suppresses the signals your body was built to send. The warmth in your eyes, the openness in your posture, the natural animation that rises when you're genuinely drawn to someone. Anxiety clamps it all shut at the surface. So what you felt radiating outward, that current of interest, that aliveness, it never actually left the building. It stayed locked inside you, invisible, while your face held a careful stillness that read, to them, as indifference. And the most devastating finding in the studies on this, the more attracted you were, the less interested you appeared. Anxiety and attraction moved in opposite directions. One rose, the other got buried, so they pulled back. Not because they weren't interested, but because they saw no door to walk through. You both left confused, you thinking you were rejected, them thinking you simply didn't care, and neither story was true. This time, they were trying. The signals were there. Looking back, they were obvious. The way the conversation kept stretching past the point it should have ended, the extra effort in the details, the warmth that had no practical reason to exist. It was there. All of it was there, but your brain ran it through a different filter. They're probably just being polite. That could mean anything. I don't want to assume. I don't want to get it wrong. And underneath all of that, quieter and more honest, I don't want to be the one who thought it was something when it was nothing. So you filed the warmth under ambiguous. Filed ambiguous under probably nothing. And walked away protecting yourself from an embarrassment that was never coming. Then the text arrived. Days later, confused. Almost hurt. Why didn't you reach out? I thought we had something. And there it is. The full weight of it. Someone stood in front of you, holding something real. And your negativity bias took the evidence, reviewed it carefully, and threw it in the trash. Not because the signal wasn't sent, because you'd been burned enough times that your brain had quietly reset the threshold for proof to something no human being could ever actually meet. The text was sent at 9:47 p.m. By 10:15, the story had already started writing itself. Not slowly, rapidly, with detail, with conviction, with a cast of characters, and a plot that felt more real with every passing minute of silence. They're pulling away. I said something wrong. They've been different lately. This is how it always starts. Nothing happened. The phone was simply quiet. The evening was simply still. But your brain, that magnificent, catastrophizing, meaning-making machine, cannot tolerate a vacuum. It was never built to. Silence is data. Ambiguity is a threat. And in the absence of information, there is a specific network in your brain that doesn't wait for facts. It generates a story instead. And here is what makes it so convincing. It doesn't write fiction. It writes historical fiction. It reaches back into every relationship that ever went quiet before it ended. Every person who pulled away without warning. Every time the stillness preceded the loss. It pulls all of that into the present moment and uses it as a script. So the unanswered text isn't just an unanswered text. It's evidence. The canceled plan isn't just a scheduling conflict. It's a pattern. The quiet evening isn't just tiredness. It's the beginning of an ending you've survived before. And then you act on it. You go cold to protect yourself. You send a message designed to test whether they'll chase. You over-explain something that needed no explanation, because the anxiety has to go somewhere. You create distance in response to a distance that never actually existed. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that's when things actually break. Not because something was wrong, but because you believed the story so completely that you started living inside it, and the story became the thing that made it real. One afternoon, one moment, one person who said no, or said nothing, which felt worse. And it should have been filed exactly as that. A single data point. An isolated event with 100 possible explanations that had nothing to do with you. Their timing, their fears, their history, their bad day, their own locked doors. But that's not how a wounded brain processes rejection. It doesn't file it as an incident. It files it as evidence. Evidence of something it already quietly suspected about you. And the moment that suspicion gets confirmed, even once, even by someone who barely knew you, it stops being a thought and starts becoming a conclusion. A label, a thing you carry into every room from that afternoon forward. Too much. Not enough. Unlovable. The kind of person that people leave. Born in a single exchange. Hardened over years of being filtered through that same lens. Every ambiguous silence, every unreturned warmth, every locked door, now read as confirmation of the original verdict. This is how one rejection becomes an identity. Not through logic, not through evidence, but through a brain that was searching for meaning and found the cruelest possible answer to the question of why. With strangers, you can manage it. You've built enough distance, enough performance, enough careful architecture around yourself that the small slights don't detonate. They sting. You notice them, but you hold it together. It's the people you love that undo you. Because with them, the ones you've actually let in, the ones whose opinion has weight, whose presence means something, the threshold collapses entirely. A slight shift in tone, a casual criticism, a moment where they seemed, for just a second, less warm than usual. And something in you doesn't register it as minor feedback from a person having a human moment. It registers as abandonment. The rational brain knows. It knows the comment was small, the moment was ordinary, the relationship is intact. But the emotional brain, the one wired by every early wound, primed by every dismissal, carrying every verdict ever delivered, doesn't consult reason. It feels the ground disappear. And the reaction that follows doesn't match the moment. It matches the history, the explosion, the shutdown, the words said through gritted teeth that can't be taken back, the job lost, the relationship fractured over something that should have been nothing. And afterward, the confusion. Why do I keep doing this? The answer is always the same. You weren't reacting to them. You were reacting to everyone who came before. Nobody is going to give you 5 steps out of this. Not because the steps don't exist, but because what you're dealing with isn't a knowledge problem. You already know, on some level, that the silence probably means nothing. You already know the criticism was minor. You already know you're spiraling. Knowing has never been the thing that stopped it. What needs to change isn't in your mind. It's deeper than that. It's in the part of you that learned, long before you had words for any of this, that being seen was dangerous. That reaching out ended in empty hands. That the quiet before someone left felt exactly like this quiet. And so this quiet must mean the same thing. You cannot think your way out of a wound that was never installed through thinking. What genuine change actually requires, and this is the part nobody wants to hear, is staying. Staying in the discomfort of not knowing how something ends. Sitting with the ambiguity without immediately converting it into a story that lets you act, withdraw, protect, conclude. Letting the silence be silence for long enough to discover that it was, in fact, just silence. It requires going back to your body when the story machine starts running. Not to silence it, you cannot silence it, but to notice it. To feel your feet on the floor. To recognize the narrative for what it is, an old script, running in a new scene, cast with the wrong people. It requires tolerating, slowly and imperfectly, the experience of being seen and surviving it. Not once, repeatedly, until the nervous system begins to accumulate a different kind of evidence, until presence starts to feel less like a threat and more like something you can bear. This is not a transformation that happens in a single moment of insight. It happens in the ordinary seconds, the text you don't immediately overanalyze, the silence you don't immediately fill, the warmth you actually let land instead of immediately questioning its motives. It is slow. It is non-linear. And it is the only thing that actually works. Join the Wired for Intense community as we move from frozen to felt. Subscribe, like, and share your story in the comments to keep learning the language your body has been speaking all along. Because here's what's waiting on the other side of all of it. Not fearlessness, not the absence of anxiety, or the permanent silencing of the story machine. Just curiosity. The ability to walk into a moment and wonder how it ends, instead of deciding. To stop locking doors from the inside before anyone has had the chance to knock. To remember, the school was interested. The interview request was sitting there the whole time. You just have to check the spam folder.